I've heard some things lately. I talked to a longtime Democrat here who said, I am worried in Hays County that we'll wake up on November 4th and what we will hear is there's been a giant blue wave everywhere but Hays County. And I'm like, I don't.
Have you seen Comac?
Right. Good one. Yeah. But I do think that it is time for us to get on the team. It's time for us to be together and for us to all work as one.
Yes.
And the other thing that I wanted to say is that all of these candidates are smart people. They are competent people. And they're good people, but they're not perfect people because none of us is. So when I hear out in the world, like in Houston, that people have a problem with James Tellerico, it really ticks me off because I'm going, you would vote for his opponent because he didn't do one little thing for you. That is really unacceptable. And so I think we all need to be cognizant of that and to keep the end goal in mind. The other thing I wanted to say is this past week, and I'm not going to tell you who it is, but I think you'll probably figure it out. I heard an elected person from another state who said, the old saw is that campaigning is easy and governing is hard. But having done both, I would say campaigning is hard and governing is easy. Because campaigning is not for everybody, number one. And number two, when you're campaigning, you are trying to earn trust. And a lot of these people have not held office before. What they have to do is they have to convince you that, hey, I can do this job. And what they're thinking about is how I can do this job. So the whole time they're campaigning, they're thinking, this is why I wanted to run, because I wanted to solve this problem. I wanted to do this. So remember to be easy on them because campaigning is hard. And I've done it myself. You get the door slammed in your face sometimes. You have some nasty comments on social media. So, give them a little pat on the back and understand that this is the toughest part. The rewarding part comes when we have Democrats in office and they're working together to meet our values and we're all working toward a common purpose. I am going to start off with Merrie Fox and Tanya Lloyd. And Tanya is in 73, right?
27.
You're in 27 and Merrie's just like 70. Yeah, it's just numbers. Yeah,
It's just numbers.
yeah, it's just numbers. So you can stay seated.
I don't mind to stand.
Okay, good. All right. So what I had wanted to do here today was for you all to get to know these people. I explained to them that we are high information voters here. In general, if you don't understand something, most of the time you call me, but I think a lot of us are dedicated to finding out what's going on. Unlike a lot of other places that just sort of take it all in and, make their own thing. So I want you to tell us more about you, but what I'd like to do is ask you a question first. And I think it speaks to what you've been talking about a little bit too. You talk about America's rural revival.
Yes.
And I really do like that because I like an alliteration, but I think it's also something that you can remember. And those of us that are in rural areas, and we aren't as rural as some people, but we're still pretty rural compared to, downtown Austin. We're seeing the Republican Party erode our jurisdictions. And if you're in city government, you know it. And they're also eroding our values because they are twisting their own values. So the two things that I think you have talked about a lot are healthcare and the economy. And you're a teacher, and I think a teacher is always a good candidate.
Right on.
They're always a good office holder for sure. But how do those two issues affect those of us living in rural areas?
So
when we talk about rural communities, Lockhart, Gonzales, all the way down to Nueces County, Aransas, there's a lot of rural communities. You would be surprised how many of these communities do not have access to a hospital. Their schools are closing. I was just talking to a lady in Calhoun County. They closed their middle school. They're having to bus their kids to different school districts. If we don't have hospitals or healthcare available or good school districts, what is going to happen to those towns? They're going to die. No business is going to come in where there's not a hospital. Businesses are not going to come in where there's no good school districts. And so we have to invest in healthcare and hospitals in these small districts and these small towns, and we have to invest in rural school districts. Because when companies are coming to look, families are coming to look to move to these places, they're going to go, oh, there's not a hospital, but there's one down the street in this other town over, so we're going to go over there. And so those are two things that I think really, when we're talking about rural revival, hospitals and schools. And they're also great employers.
Yes, they're usually the largest employers.
They are usually the largest. I know in Caldwell County, Lockhart ISD is the largest employer in Caldwell County. So,
yeah. You have a few things you want to say, and then I'm going to move on to Merrie.
I do. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Tanya Lloyd. I am a public school teacher running for Congress. I, along with my husband, start year 20 on Monday in Lockhart ISD. So campaigning and school teaching, we're going to see how that works. I've done it for a couple of years, but it can be a lot. I've never held office. I hold court every day in my classroom. I've never held office. So the reason I'm running for this seat in particular was right before filing deadline. I guess it was in November of 23. Sorry, dates slide out of the head sometimes. There was not going to be a Democrat on the ticket running in this seat. Wow. Michael Cloud was going to run unopposed. And he's 100% pro-life, no exceptions. I have a beautiful 24-year-old daughter that nearly killed me 24 years ago. I had something called HELP syndrome, which stands for hypertension, elevated liver enzymes, and low platelets. I went to a regular doctor's appointment on a Friday afternoon, and my blood pressure was 215 over 185. So that was a walking stroke, right? That was not good. So the nurse comes in, she does her blood pressure thing, and she goes, "Doctor, will be in just a minute." And I was like, "Oh, 30 minutes, it'll be." Oh no, he was in that room in 30 seconds, and he took my blood pressure, and I went, "We're in trouble," right? Sent me to the hospital. It was a Friday afternoon. I was just shy of 30 weeks pregnant. And Monday morning he comes in and he says, "We're having a baby today." And I said, "It's October 22nd. I'm due December 25th. Can we wait?" He's like, "No, we can't wait. Your blood platelets have dropped to 103,000. And I'm like, "And?"
What does that mean?
I don't know what that meant. And he says, "Well, below 100,000, your blood doesn't clot. So we're having a baby today." And I said, "Okay." So we had a beautiful 3-pound, 6-ounce baby, stayed in this NICU for 6 weeks. And I tell that story because I was blessed. My husband was blessed. I was 30 weeks along. And we had the opportunity to have a beautiful, healthy, small baby. But what would happen to me in Texas right now, or your daughter, your granddaughter, your nieces, if they were 16 weeks pregnant and their blood platelets were 103,000? Yeah. And they were dropping 25,000 points a day like mine were. So that's what I was thinking about when I made the decision to run for office. And I looked at my husband, who's been begging me to run for office for years. And I said, "Guess what, honey? I'm running for office." And here I am, standing in front of you, asking for your support. Since then, I've added a really long list of things that I want to fix when I get to Congress. Healthcare. We can go down. There's a really long list, and I'll be happy to answer any questions later, but
Yeah.
I'll move on.
Let's get going, because we do have a
Yes.
pretty good thing. So Merrie, we all know Merrie, I think, and we know her opponent, don't we? And you're welcome to boo. Right. So your top 2 issues, and we've all talked about this, are water and education, and that is your unique background. When I said these people are smart, we've got PhDs in our group. Merrie's one of them. And so, what has happened with water and education is the mess that is the state government. And so those issues have been usurped by Republicans. So how are you planning to take them back so that you can represent us, because we know Carrie Isaac doesn't?
Yes, and I'm gonna stand just like Tanya because I feel better about that. Good evening, everybody. It's so nice to be here. Thank you for your time tonight. Like Rebecca said, my name is Merrie Fox, running for House District 73. My opponent is Carrie Isaac. So on the subject of water, I grew up in Comal County. I moved there in '82 as a young teenager, barely teenager, and so for 45 years I've had the blessing of being able to live in the hill country. And so I got to grow up as a teenager swimming in the rivers and the lakes and, you know, breathing the clean air. We moved here from Houston because my dad had emphysema and we needed clean air and open space. I want that for future generations. I got to raise my kids here who also got to swim in the rivers and the lakes and enjoy these beautiful places. They did Emily Ann, Shakespeare Under the Stars at the time, so we are very familiar with Wimberley and even Dripping Springs and of course Comal County. So as far as water is concerned, I have learned every time I find an answer to something, I come up with 2 or 3 more questions. It is a complex beast of an issue, right? And when we talk, we have groundwater, we have surface water, we have wastewater, and all of those have varying entities that govern them with different levels of authority over them. And so the issues that I am facing, or that I am focusing on, are, like Russell mentioned, development. Let's say over at Canyon Lake on 306 near 281, there Lanark Homes comes in. Their operating standard is to scrape that land, and every tree, cedars and heritage oaks alike, they scrape it all. And then they plat that for about 4 to 5 homes per acre. And so we're talking about our groundwater being used, which is a concern. I think maybe even more so is the wastewater. What happens to the wastewater? Because right now the MO is to build a wastewater treatment facility for every one of these neighborhoods, and then they dump that wastewater, which is treated by TCEQ standards, which are archaic and don't account for the advances that we've had in pharmaceuticals, the number of people that, you know, are using it, and they are dumping hundreds of thousands of gallons of wastewater every day. When I say hundreds of thousands, the Juniper Ranch over on 306 is gonna dump 300,000 gallons of wastewater every day into an unnamed tributary, which then, I know, it's so fun, which then goes into a creek which feeds into Canyon Lake. And so before this past week or 2 weeks ago when we had all of this rain, now Canyon Lake is back up to 98%, 96%. It was full. Yeah, I think it's at 910.
They declared it full.
Awesome. But before that, it was at 52%, 53%. And so you think about even when it's full, Juniper Ranch is not the only subdivision that's doing that. And Canyon Lake is not the only place that it's happening. It's happening here too. It's happening in Dripping Springs, and it causes all kinds of issues. Not only that nutrient stacking of all of that wastewater going into these tributaries and into these waterways, but also going across people's ranches. And so then we start thinking about the wildlife that's on the ranches. Instead of fresh rainwater collecting in these berms and in these little places where they can get drinks of water, we've got wastewater coming across the ranches. So wildlife, and also our property values. Who's gonna buy eventually, if you ever wanna sell land where we've got wastewater coming across? So there are all kinds of issues with water that we have to solve, and right now my opponent is not interested in solving them. I'll put it out there. Her chief of staff, Terry Franks, used to be a lobbyist for Aqua Texas. He was a chief of staff for Jason Isaac. There are all kinds of conflicts of interest there. She put out a post the other day that said, "Yay, data centers, can't wait." Like, well, not in the, and then she backed it up and then said, "Well, not in the hill country," to which I made a little video saying it's 0.6 of a mile from the hill country. So exactly who is she serving? It is not us. So water is very definitely a hot topic that I plan to address when I am your representative in January.
That I have is, it's red over there and it's red here. What's the plan? How are we
Okay.
gonna win this
Yeah, so the plan is this. It's so funny that you asked that now because because we feel momentum in this campaign and it is fantastic. We've got great support, super volunteers. I went to an event. I've joined all the chambers in the area, just trying to get to know people and build bridges. And you have to get in front of Republicans, right? We're not going to reach those far Republicans, but the people in the middle, yes, we can reach them because they want the same things we do. They just have to be talked into voting for someone with a D beside their name. Good Lord. So I went to this chamber meeting the other 2 nights ago, and I walked in, y'all, Trump flags everywhere. And I thought, you know what? I can turn around and leave, or I can put my feet on the ground and my shoulders back and my chin up and say, I'm a Democrat, this is why, and this is how I want to represent you. And that's what I did. And so it's showing up in those places. And I talked about, I am willing, in fact, I think it's a responsibility for good leaders to show up in places where people have differing opinions. That's how you grow. That's how you gut check yourself to make sure that all perspectives are included. Russell?
And to make the point to your question specifically, since this is my territory and I have to deal with this every time we have an event, our events have been specifically focused on issues that don't just affect one side of the aisle. And every time we do one of these events, we have 3, 4, 5 Republicans showing up.
Yep.
And we're not just having Merrie show up. We have congressional candidates show up. We have state senator candidates. You name it, we have it. And when these people engage with these candidates and they understand what the solutions that they're proposing are or what they're trying to enact when they get in there, people start to have their minds turned. There are obviously members and elements of the Republican side that are never going to want to hear what we have to say or never want to have anything to do with a constructive conversation with us. But in Comal, things are changing.
They are. So thank you, Russell. Specific to this campaign, we're trying to think out of the box. Certainly I am going to these meetings. I'm going to county commissioners. I've kind of stepped back from a little bit in Comal and in Hayes, and I'll get there, but going to city council meetings, school board meetings, introducing myself, saying thank you for your service, whoever's serving on that board, and this is how I want to represent you. These are the things that I can do for your particular area. But also we'll be block walking, of course, and phone banking and all of those things. But one of the ideas we had, and we are running with it, is for any of you familiar with elementary schools in the past or current, some parents are willing and able to start lining up to pick their kiddo up from school at the end of school about an hour early. Y'all, that's a captive audience right there. And so our plan is we've lined up every single elementary school in the district, and we've got volunteers, and we're gonna go stand an hour before school is out. We're gonna go out there and hold our signs. And the signs will certainly be for the campaign, but also signs specific to education. Signs like, this school matters, so does your child, vote pro public education, and Texas is 44th, we deserve better, our kids pay the price, those kinds of things. So really trying to meet people where they are and get their attention.
That's great.
Yeah.
With everybody behind you so I can take a
Oh my gosh. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
Up here or down there?
Up here. Okay.